replacements. So the people who are speaking are not necessarily the ones that are listed, but I've been assured that they will do at least as good a job as the people they're replacing, and quite possibly better. Quite possibly better, Cynthia. So the first speaker is Cynthia Love, the Director of Public Sector Data and National Collections from the Australian National Data Service. Cynthia, come on down. Your time starts now. And there's your thingy.
Okay, I'm here masquerading as Adrian Burton, who sends his apologies, he's unwell. So what we're looking at here is why would one have citation? The ultimate is scientific accountability, so that you can actually reproduce the experiment or whatever that's happened, that you can actually go back and see the data on which whatever research outcome has been built. Another aspect of this is better discoverability. If your data's out there and it's cited and it's being cited by other people and it's in various portals, you have better chance of people finding your data and finding your work and reusing your work, which then leads to the next one, which is enabling acknowledgement and reward, where if you're being cited, just as happens with your journal articles, the more you get cited, the more your H factor. I always get this muddled up and call it G-spot, and it gets people embarrassed.
Not interchangeable in any way.
Yes, I brought our management team undone in Ciro when I did that once. Your H factor, which is your reputation, is enhanced, and if your reputation's enhanced, and that flows onto your institution, and your institution's reputation's enhanced, money flows, good things happen, and you get promoted and they get lots of money to do your research. Hang on a minute. Is that right? Good. The thing that we want to emphasise here is this is backed by DataCite. DataCite is a not industrial, an international strength organisation. It already has over 1 million digital object identifiers issued. It is backed by some serious strengths. British Library, TIB, which is the Technical Information Library. The full German is?
Informationsbibliothek.
My beautiful assistant. SISTI in Canada. So major national organisations, and in Australia it's ANS. So we're the agent here essentially for DOIs for DataCite in Australia. The other thing that supports this are global systems. So like Crossref is for publications, DataCite is for data, and it is global. So it isn't a case where we've got, like we have with the railway systems in Australia, where you've got one gauge in one state and another gauge in another. It is a global thing that happens across geographic boundaries. Also, it's backed by identifiers such as ORCID and ISME, and there are millions of researchers, tens of millions in fact, as the slide says, using this. And DataCite is in that category. So the thing that you need to think about in terms of this, and that will be the topic of discussion in the next presentations as well as the Q&A afterwards, is the fact that you need to get prepared. And you need to put that thought into how your institution, your research is going to be well cited, so that you can harvest these rich rewards that I outlined earlier. So the essential question that we will leave you with is, will you get visibility for your researchers and their data? And that can be the topic of discussion. I will now, do you want to be Master of Ceremonies, or do we just seamlessly hand over?
So I was actually, before we dive into the more detailed discussion, I was wondering if it might be a good idea just to ask if there are any quick questions or clarification before we move on to the next talk from Karen. You've apparently been limpidly clear and lucid.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen.
That's where we juggled the sequence. Oh, that's right, we have to. Sorry. You're not Karen, you're Kim.
That's right.
Yes, so, sorry. So Dave Connell impersonating Kim Finney from the Australian Antarctic Division.
That's right. So what I'm going to be talking about is our experiences with DIs. We're just really getting started with this whole sort of process, so we haven't really got in anything actually started yet. But this will hopefully give you a bit of an idea of where we're going to be going with it. And I notice Cynthia has 8 seconds remaining on her talk. Did you have anything you want to add? Speed, okay. Here comes there.
Whoa, see, it's not really... Go crazy.
Nice. Okay. So, first up, why DIY, as far as we're concerned. First thing I should point out is check out the ANZ website, because that has an awful lot of information on it as to why you should go ahead and do this. But from our perspective, we were starting to find that there were sort of 2 real reasons as to why we were starting to think about DIs. One of those is because we have all our users, our researchers and scientists kept coming and asking us about them. And from the other end of the spectrum, from our perspective, we wanted to do it because it was good data management practice. So just there we go. So if I just can address the user's perspective first, we were sort of starting to find that the scientists were coming and asking about DIs for data sets because they were being told to do it by the journals they were submitting all their papers to, which is great as far as I was concerned, because I've been working in metadata and data management for sort of 14 years, and it's frustratingly hard sometimes trying to get data out of scientists. So when they were actually having to come and volunteer it because they were told to by the journals, that certainly made my life a lot easier. So we were certainly starting to find that scientists needed to be able to cite their data sort of in a much more efficient and effective manner, and part of the solution to that was DIs. They were also wanting to start re-referencing their own data for their own sort of personal reuse and the like. So once again, they needed to be able to effectively do that. And the last part of all that was that we can sort of put all these data sets and links up onto the web. We have a system that's run by NASA in the US, who sort of manage all of our metadata for us. We wanted to make sure we had sort of nice, sort of stable sort of landing pages and URLs for the data sets. So we thought DIs would be sort of a good link in that chain. Next one. Okay, so still on the user's perspective, scientists were also starting to realise that other people were wanting to use their data, and so if their data was correctly sort of badged up with the DOI, then it was much easier to cite, it was easy to track, and they get a lot more credit for it that way. So as long as everything was all there, then they would, when the data set was reused, all the correct details would come back to them, and they would sort of get glowing endorsements from other journals and papers, and which tend to make them happy, which is always good. It's good to have happy scientists. Okay. All right. So back from our end, from the data center's perspective, we were doing it also because data collection in Antarctic is very expensive. I'm not sure if any of you were at my talk yesterday, but I mentioned some figures that it costs between several thousands of dollars to many hundreds of thousands of dollars just to support a single person in the Antarctic to collect data, depending on how long they go for. So if you're going to be spending that much money on actually collecting the data, you want to make sure it's properly tucked away and archived and also correctly labelled. So that was one of the reasons why, another reason why we're sort of thinking about getting into this. Part of that is also the collaboration, not the competition point. So we were trying to sort of shift the culture in our scientists from one where they're denying access to data is seen as a competitive advantage to one where if they make the data available, then suddenly you've got collaboration, people working together and so on. And also, once again, if you've got people working together, that leads to more publications, more better science. You're being cited a lot more often, and that's all good. Also, because Antarctica is such a long way away, it's hard to work there. If you don't do all this sort of correctly in the first place, for us it was a case of there could be lost opportunities. Scientific events may only come along once every now and then, like a meteor shower or a solar flare or so on. So if you don't get all that done properly in the first place, then that could be gone and you'll never get to do it again. And while the DOIs don't solve all these problems, they're certainly a part of the solution, and they'll certainly help us out. And the last part to do with all this is because a lot of the organisations and stuff we work with, not only all the universities but also within the Australian Antarctic Division itself, where everybody's really seems to be starting to come around to this sort of performance sort of measurement management sort of style. So what's happening with all of our scientists is that they're all going to start getting scores on sort of how well they do with all their data submission and meeting their metadata and data obligations. And DOIs can sort of really help that, because if all their data are labelled with DOIs, then it's all out there in the world. If we can sort of track how much people are using them, we can sort of build up citation indices and metrics and stuff. And we're working with the Thomson Reuters project. We're part of that little sort of get together to find out sort of how much this data is being reused. I'm just going to stop the timer before it goes beep. I'm about done anyway. There we go. And the last part for us is that, because this all has a big relevance in policy, being a government department, all of our money comes from Ohio on the taxpayers, and it's always going to be there, and we're always going to keep doing this sort of science. So we want to make sure that we're not wasting all of your money collecting sort of fantastic sort of little scientific experiments. This is the last little bit. We've only really started sort of putting this together, but we've started sort of putting a few pages together to let our scientists sort of access DOIs and for our admin staff to sort of start processing them as well. But anyway, that's me all done. Hopefully that
Thank you.
helped.
So Kim with air quotes, if you and Cynthia could come and sit up on stage. Doesn't matter, I'll move over here. So if you just press the red button when you want to talk. So we've now got 6 or 7 minutes for questions. And let me, no, I won't be greedy and ask my question first. Does anyone have any questions before I ask one myself? All right. In that case, let me start off with my question. So the topic of this afternoon's slot is not DOIs, it's data citation. But you both talked about DataCite as the data citation mechanism. So is this the only one? And if not, why is this one so important?
She was looking at you.
I was looking at both of you. Because I was trying to visualise the kind of merging the two of you together into Kim Finney. That's right. Didn't work.
Is this Adrian Finney or Kim Burton?
Either one can answer, I don't mind.
Well, I mean, DataCite's obviously, as I said, it's got that international strength. It is also backed by a fabulous Australian organisation called ADS,
Okay.
which speaks for itself. But to me, it's the actual having that international, because research crosses geographic boundaries, and having something that has the global reach would make sense to go with that.
Okay. And whatever the other half of the two-headed beast is.
Well, for us, it was the case of Kim came in to me and said, we need to get DOIs for our data sets, and Anne's give them to you for free. So
Okay, so your answer is my boss made me do it?
definitely part of it. So the reason why the whole DataCite thing is because you guys use DataCite, that's where you get them from, and we have to use you.
Came down and heavy.
Yeah,
No, we
that's
didn't.
right.
Okay. Yep.
Irrespective of the mechanism by which you facilitate.
Oh, thank you, Karen.
Mark Pallieu from Griffith University. Irrespective of the method that you facilitate data citation, do you have any measures of actual citation, and are they being gathered only by the researchers themselves, or are you also assisting them in assessing the impact of their data publication work?
So can I ask if you're going to cover that in your talk, Karen?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. So hold that thought.
Yeah, we might, if you're going to be here for after the rest of the
He
session.
has to be now because he's got to find the answer to his question.
Yes, we're not going to tell you the answer to that question yet. Sorry, it's just that I suspected Karen was probably going to pick that one up. Okay, way down the back.
While the microphone's moving, from an Antarctic Division perspective, we keep track of all the data sets that are downloaded, so we know who's downloading data and sometimes what for, but at the moment, because we still haven't getting the DOIs implemented, we haven't quite got the citation tracking sort of going yet, but hopefully Thomson Reuters will help with that as you go.
Peter Blaine from IMOS. If I've got one of your DOIs, I'm just wondering how I actually use that to get the data and the associated metadata that goes with it.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
I think the way it's going to work, if you're part of IMOS and you're talking about Antarctic sort of related data, then I think for us the way it'll work is that you'll come across the DOI somewhere, and for us it'll be a matter of you click on it, it'll take you to the metadata record that's associated with that data set, and from there there'll be links to download the data and stuff from that.
And I should say parenthetically, that's a relatively common practice, that the DOI tends to take you to the DOI, if you're a human being, takes you to a splash page with the metadata. There is an interesting question around how you have DOIs resolve if you're not a human being, if you're a computer following a DOI, and at the last data site strategy meeting late last year, they're talking about using HTTP content negotiation so that if you're a human being, you get the splash page, and if you're a machine, you get a redirect straight through to the data. At the moment it doesn't, but that's part of the plans for the next piece of work. Any other questions? Yes, Wilna.
Wilna McMillan from Monash University. There's talk of working with Thomson Reuters. Is there any move to work with Scopus as well? Around citation, that is, data citation.
Karen, thank you for anticipating the next talk.
Another one.
It's like we've got a couple of warm-up people.
That's right. All your Dorothy Dicks are in the wrong session.
Yeah.
Karen, what were you doing?
Yeah, there have been some interesting developments over the last few months, which I'm sure Karen will address in her contribution. Any other questions? Someone who's obviously very new to data management. Sure, Sam.
Hi, Sam Till from Griffith. Most of us in this room won't have been engaging with the dataset people in any real way. I'm interested in knowing whether that consortium is going to start looking at non-technical barriers to citation, because there's a lot of talk about rewards.
Yeah.
But as any of us know who've been trying to work with creative arts researchers to get their research outputs recognised and rewarded, having an identifier isn't the only barrier that we're facing here.
I might deflect to you on that one.
Okay, so Adrian Burton, currently being impersonated by Cynthia, normally goes to the data site strategy meetings. The last data site, and in fact wasn't a meeting 2 weeks ago, and I haven't had a debrief from him yet. The last meeting that I went to, they were really mostly focused on the infrastructure plumbing rather than what you do with the plumbing. And I think it's probably important to distinguish between data site as a plumbing mechanism and then what the plumbing makes possible. So the things that Thomson Reuters and Elsevier are building on top of one thing, the things that research funding organisations might build on top of another thing. I agree there's a whole cluster of issues around how you incentivise, it's a terrible word, how you make more attractive the use of these kinds of things, but I'm not sure that that's at the forefront of the thinking of the data site consortium. They're still making sure the plumbing works.
I think some of that probably has to be evolutionary too. That as you get critical mass and as the reputation grows as a result of that, it'll become more and more embedded in the culture. And it may be, obviously there is some stuff that has to be managed and implemented in a managed way to encourage it, but I think some of it will just happen as a natural thing.
Okay, we need to now break for 5 minutes to allow people to move between rooms. Please join me in thanking Adrian and Kim. I'll leave it up to them and their consciences as to whether they pass on the presents or not.